Welcome to Conversations at the Irving Public Library. We're very happy this time to be talking with C.W. Smith, who's here to talk about his new novel, Purple Hearts. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Pam.
I noticed in a lot of your books that you like to use historical periods. Does that require a lot of research?
Yes, it does. In fact,
sure,
it's
yeah.
both times that I've sort of done this kind of book, it's required years of research, and I find I like to do the research.
Yeah.
And the particular period of World War II on the home front in this one was something that I was aware of growing up. I was a very small child, but every adult I knew, as soon as the war was over, that seems like that's all they talked about. What did you do during the war? Where were you during the war? And so they traded their stories, and a lot of them, I know my dad was not in the war. He worked in the oil industry in Corpus, and I was born in Corpus, and so he was among those who stayed back to work in the defense industries, and so I've always been interested in that period. So a lot of the research, that you could call it, was simply absorbing what grown-ups had told me during those years. But then I did a lot of research in magazines and simply in books and historical oral histories of World War II. Studs Terkel has one, and just trying to absorb what people were doing, what they were like, what they were up to, what they carried in their pockets. And I was interested a lot in how the period actually might have been different from what our sort of rosy, romantic, idealistic picture of it was. And so that was, my research kind of led me to that idea of writing a book about the home front in World War II, in which the way people lived was not exactly the way it was depicted in, Saturday Evening Post covers.
Right, yes,
and
exactly.
And so about the time that we had the 50th anniversary in '95, and all those coffee table books started coming out about the greatest generation, and I felt it was there was a lot of romantic blather there, and that I wanted to kind of correct in some way through the book.
Beginning of your book, you have a disclaimer that there was a race riot in Beaumont, as there were in other. What caused these kinds of riots? This was Texas, but they were in other places
well,
too.
there was a huge one in Detroit and Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., and this is in 1943, in the summer of 1943. And I think they were basically caused by the same kind of social upheaval, populations on the move, everything's crowded. Suddenly, down in, for instance, in Beaumont, the public transportation system was largely buses, in which they had the standard Jim Crow division in the back, where literally a line drawn across the aisle in the back, where the coloreds sit in the back and the whites sit in the front. Well, if you have a bus that seats 50 people, and there are 20 to 30 people aboard at any given time prior to this period, then people can observe these Jim Crow laws and without any kind of real friction. But if suddenly you put 85, 90, 100 people on the bus, and people who are strangers to town, have come to town and are not inclined to follow these observances, then there are a lot of fistfights broke out on the bus between African American young men and white men, between young African American soldiers and white men, because they were not physically able to observe the Jim Crow laws because of the pressures of the population on these transportation systems. And the same was true in housing, and in the way people, there were just simply not enough places to live, and people's tempers were short, and the people, the folks who lived in the town, who had lived there all that time, were very reluctant to play host to thousands and thousands and thousands of strangers for the duration, and nobody knew how long it was going to go on. And so in this particular case of this particular riot, the actual riot was provoked by a rumor that a white woman had been raped by a black man, and she was supposedly the wife of a Pennsylvania shipyard worker, and so when the rumor spread, then the shipyard workers just left their shift and all
rushed it.
just flooded through the town and burned and pillaged and started fires, and so and that went on for about 72 hours, and a martial law was declared, and the acting governor had to send a state militia down to try to quell the riot, and several people were killed officially and probably more unofficially.
The characters in the book, in particular Georgie, the guy who enlists in the Army even though he has epilepsy,
Yeah.
which he knows,
Yeah.
and his whole background, a scion of this oil and timber family with a
Yeah.
mother from hell,
Yeah.
and
Well, he's a fat, rich kid who's
Fat and rich and
been
sissy.
homeschooled all his
Yeah,
life
right.
because of epilepsy,
That's
and
right.
but he has a sense, and he's very innocent, and he has a sense of honor, and when he gets an opportunity
does.
to marry this beautiful stranger who comes to town,
Yeah.
he really wants to do something that will impress her and be the brave man.
he
So he enlists
doesn't,
in the
right.
enlists in the Army, and it doesn't last through boot camp because it's soon discovered that he does have epilepsy, and he has to go home. But the aspect of that triangle in the boarding house,
Yeah,
not the
Sylvia.
boarding house, Sylvia and Robert, who also comes to town from Washington, D.C., was kind of like, I don't know if you remember an old movie called Since You Went Away,
Oh,
or
yeah.
the book and a movie, in which a brave woman and her teenage daughter play host to this young Air Force lieutenant, and she keeps writing away to her husband who's away at the war, and the whole spirit of that book is bravery and the sacrifice and the courage, and I thought, what if that same situation were really handled by Tennessee Williams and James M. Cain or something, working as a committee.
Yeah, right. To do your
Yeah, so that the characters were more realistic in their aspirations and their desires and their itches and their
Right.
restlessness and their angers and their bitterness and some of their the realistic human.
Well, they were. I think they are.
yeah.
It was really interesting to see how that worked with and the way the class structure was changing. I mean, Sylvia, obviously, the mother was horrified at Sylvia,
Right.
was from. I mean, Georgie just loved her because she was beautiful, but the mother, oh my God, what is this piece of trash
Right,
coming into
right.
my wonderful home?
She's a hostess in a
That's
hotel dining room, for God's
I
sake.
mean,
you know?
really,
Yeah.
yes. How can we stand this?
Yeah.
And she didn't make things any easier.
Yeah.
But Sylvia was desperate too,
Yeah.
and I think she really did care for Georgie
yes.
because he was a gentle, sweet
Well,
person.
one of the things I tried to do with the love triangle, he goes off to war. She's in charge of this big house. She wants money
Right.
to protect herself from the mother-in-law, so she rents out the room to a boarder, and he turns out to be very handsome and attractive, and he's also they're very simpatico and they're
Yes.
very friendly with each other, and they talk a lot, and they have an intimacy that lures her into the situation and works on her desire she wants to be a faithful wife.
She does.
And I think in successive drafts, as I wrote the book, she became more and more resistant, so that I think the number of occasions where she surrenders in the book now is maybe like, I think one for sure.
yeah, right.
And
I know one for sure. And
one
the
for
rest
sure.
of the time she's kind of
the night that Georgie calls home saying that he's coming.
right.
home.
That's when she gets.
And that's the only one in this draft. So she became more sympathetic to me the more more drafts of the book I wrote, and I wanted to make the story. I wanted all three characters to be sympathetic because they're caught up in this situation. They have these desires, not just lust for one another, but this kind of yearnings to have something permanent, and she wants security and safety, and she needs it.
An interesting character too, and he gets kind of more violent and desperate as the book goes on.
Yeah.
So
once he gets shut out of the
Right,
triangle or equation,
he
and
really
it's sort
thinks
of-
she's going to run away with him.
cast out, and it's hard for him to come to terms with the idea that she would choose her husband over him.
Exactly.
And it's not that he's arrogant and conceited. It's just that, you know, in his mind, Georgie is a big epileptic baby who doesn't have any virtues whatsoever.
Zero.
Never knew how to work. He never worked for a living. And Robert is more of a working class kind of character who has contempt for Georgie, partly because of the fact that Georgie has been a rich kid all his life and never had to work for anything, and has this doting mother. And
Yeah.
so Robert finds it hard to think that Sylvia would stay with Georgie and wouldn't go off with him. But when it becomes very hard for him to maintain this illusion, he becomes kind of,
Yeah, he just
he gets a little nuts and he starts getting violent, and he picks up with
drinking.
Marjorie.
Marjorie, who
yeah,
is not the
and,
most tasteful
right,
woman.
yeah. And then he gets involved in the riot itself.
He does.
And so, you know, for me, he embodies this kind of inner rage that is testosterone-driven, that is the cause of all wars.
Well, I believe that. I
Yeah,
mean,
I do too. And
I really
that's why,
do believe that's true. If you think
I-
about it, if you just think, I was just reading, you know, about the Civil War and about Custer's Last Stand, or the two next books I'm going to do, and this, obviously that's the, you know, all this daring do and all, and, and then it causes all the war. So I do truly believe that.
Well, and that's why he gets involved in the riot, and that's why when he's in the store, he's
That's
hiding
right.
in the store from the mob. He doesn't know if the mob's black or white, and somebody breaks in, and he has this stick in his hand, and he is led by his impulse to keep wailing away at the guy, whoever he is, black or white.
Right.
Then, you know, for me, this went, and the aftermath of that for him is that he has discovered this thing in himself that's appalling
doesn't
for
like,
him. It's
right.
horrifying, and it's kind of a ghost that haunts him forever. Like, when is this going to come out again in me somewhere, sometime that I don't know? It's going to like suddenly erupt, and I'm not going to be expecting it. And so this urge to kill somebody, this need to kill somebody, in the spirit of the moment, someone I never saw, never heard. I have no idea if it's black or white or what. He's just some guy in the store who came in after me, and so that he, for me, that was working with the larger theme in the book of the war itself. Was really true in the sense that Marjorie's a small
That's right.
hometown girl who graduates from high school, and as she puts it herself, you know, if this were any other time, I'd probably be married already.
That's right.
But I want to go to New Orleans because
gonna-
where
yeah,
they're
I'm
making
gonna-
amphibious trucks, and she goes down there and falls in with a bunch of people who are partying every night, and she's got money, and she buys,
Yeah, sure.
buys her own car, and she's away from her family, and she comes back home comes back home to live after that, and is struck. Chafes under the idea that suddenly she's got to be this dutiful
This good little girl, yeah.
little girl under her father's roof whenever she was just off in New Orleans, making her own money and buying her own car and having a big time and being her own woman. And I think this happened, you know, to thousands and thousands
Sure.
and thousands of women, that the way out of the house was
To get a job.
to the workplace, and it gave them a sense of confidence, and it gave them the economic means to be independent, and which is a tremendous importance to them, I think.
Yeah,
for
I
the
mean,
first
because
time.
it was just this time when everything was like fruit basket upset.
Yeah.
Everything was changing,
Yeah.
and it's difficult to capture that. But I think that you have in this novel.
Well, you know,
that-
all those people had two cataclysmic events in their lives. That one was the Depression, and the second
That's
was the
right.
war. Just one after the other, and they had gone for a whole decade being poor.
And now-
and suddenly there was work everywhere.
Sure.
You could get work any place you wanted to, and there was good money in it. And if you didn't like that job, you could suddenly go get another one. So that idea of the war as the economic engine that altered everybody's lives is something that I thought was underplayed in the romantic idea of the war as sacrifice. The war did mean sacrifice, but it also meant bounty
That's right.
in a way that nobody had ever seen
In a
for
different-
10,
whole
10
different
15
way.
years. You know, the bountiful
Well,
war.
Well, believe it or not, we are out of time.
Oh,
That's been great. Thank you so much for being
Thank you
with
very
us.
much for
Really
having
good.
me.